This morning, it's all about glass, and not just glass, GYEON's dedicated glass cleaner. It's about clay lube and using a clay bar to properly clean and decontaminate your glass. We're gonna use glass polish in addition to an orbital polisher to show you how to really get it down to just glass and get maybe a little bit of clarity out of it. And then we're gonna coat it with View Evo to ensure that the water will repel off when you're driving down the road and give you crystal clear views even in harsh weather conditions. So first, let's get to cleaning. Now, when it comes to using a dedicated glass cleaner like this alcohol-based one, I'm gonna recommend that you try to not do it in direct sunlight. I know it is a little bit sunny right here, but the main thing is that the glass is not high temperature. If it's high temperature, the alcohol will evaporate really quickly before you can even wipe it off. Now, because it's a little bit sunny, I'm only going to spray it into my towel here. And this is actually a glass wipe. So it's a really short, low pile woven towel that's going to be really nice for cleaning glass. Gonna make sure it's pretty well saturated because I'm only spraying into the towel. And then it's a pretty straightforward process on the windshield here. You can flip it over, just ensure that there's no excess product on there, but it's as simple as that for this. So the process for a frameless door is gonna be slightly different. So I'll open the door, which gives us access to this top area of the window. A lot of stuff likes to kind of stick up here and jam up into your weather stripping when you close the door. So what I'm going to do is actually gonna hit the edge first, and you can go ahead and just kind of pinch it like this, go across the top. And then we can go ahead and wipe the rest using straight motions and then follow it up with, you can see all the stuff that's coming off, circular motions to buff it off and ensure there's no excess product left. When I close it, the window's gonna go back up and then I can just hit this bottom area just to make sure I hit the whole thing. So when it comes to claying the windshield of your car, as you drive a car like you should, you're going to get embedded contaminants in the glass, and we're going to use clay lube and a clay bar to remove those before we polish and apply our coating. So to do so, we're gonna use clay lube redefined. This is the new redefined formula, dilutable up to 1 to 25. This one's gonna be full strength, but shouldn't have issues if you go either way with that. And we're gonna use clay coarse Evo. This is the new clay bars from GYEON. And this is gonna be the little bit harder variant of the two. Because glass is so hard, it doesn't really matter which one you use. Now, it's a pretty big bar in here, so we don't need the whole thing. We're just gonna use a piece about this size, flatten it out, make sure there's nothing obvious on it. This isn't the first time we've actually used this clay bar, so we're gonna just make sure there's no sharp rocks or anything. If it gets dropped, you should toss this. Don't put it back on your car, on your paint, or even your glass, because you can scratch it. And then it's as simple as spraying the actual clay bar itself, as well as misting onto the surface. We're just gonna do back and forth motions and just guarantee and make sure that we hit every area of this windshield. And you should be able to feel or even hear a little bit of coarseness, a little bit of roughness, depending on the condition of your windshield. And once you work through the area that you hit, you can just move on and mist the next one. And the main thing is hitting the edges on windshields. That's usually the areas where there's a lot of contamination that falls out of, the weather stripping and the seals. You can see how much dirt and debris was already picked up in just half the windshield, but once you get that, you move on. You want to fold it into the clay to make sure it's not on the surface so you're not spreading all that contamination onto the next area that you're going to work. So when it comes to removing clay lube from the surface, if you're in a wash situation where you have a pressure washer or water, you can rinse it off, but we are not currently, so we're just gonna use glass to go ahead and just clean the glass again. If it kind of gets some overspray on adjacent panels, use a ceramic detailer or a detail spray you may have, or you can use Eco Wash or like a waterless wash to go ahead and wipe those. Now moving on to the actual polishing of the glass. Now something I want to clarify is that don't expect that this will remove any sort of bigger, chips or anything you have in your glass. You might notice a slight bonus in clarity. The main thing with this is that we're guaranteeing that nothing else is on the windshield, on the glass surface, so we can put a coating on it and it will bond directly to the glass surface itself. We're going to use this glass polish in addition to the cut pad. Now this is going to be the second most aggressive foam pad that GYEON has, and this one was previously used. Something I want to mention is if you use a pad for glass, I don't recommend using it for any other surfaces other than glass. In the future, do not then use it on your paint. Now you always want to spread around your polish before you turn it on. If not, it will sling all over your body. I'm gonna start it on a pretty low speed setting, and then I'm just gonna kind of cut this into probably like 6 sections and just work it around there. So a couple things to keep in mind when you are doing glass polish with a polisher like this. 50-50 overlap when you're doing the different sections. And then I'm going one time this way, one time this way. Usually want to just good practice to shut off your polisher with it still on the surface, don't pull it off. Pretty much going to be a similar process to how you would polish paint on the car. When it comes to removal of the glass polish from the surface of the windshield, you just want to use a clean towel. Something with medium length fibers is going to work best. Just make sure you hit all these edges really nicely. And the cool thing is that you don't need to go to a prep or degrease step in between this and using the coatings. So before we use it, I want to go through what all comes in the package of View Evo. You're going to have, conveniently, a small bottle of glass polish. You're going to have Repel Evo, which is the actual coating itself. You're going to have an applicator block, as well as some suedes to use with the block. Instructions, I always recommend reading these. And then it comes with a hand polisher if you don't have access to a larger orbital polisher with a pad like we used. To give you an example of how to actually use the View Evo kit, we're going to use the smaller bottle of glass polish with the hand polish pad on this side window. Pretty straightforward process, just do circular motions. You don't need heavy, just like a light film is kind of all you're looking for. You see it lightening up, add a little bit more, and move on to the next section. Then just make sure you hit your edges, and then wipe it off like we did on the windshield. So when it comes to actually applying the coating itself, Repel Evo, we are going to use the applicator block with a suede. Now this will ensure that it's a nice even coating on the surface. And then it's going to be kind of similar to a paint coating. This one we're going to work in circular motions. And if you hear the squeaking, that means you have a proper amount of product on there and the right pressure. We're going to work it in circular motions and just ensure that we have covered the entire surface that we're wanting to use it on. 50-50 overlap as we go back, similar to what we were doing with the polish. Then, when you notice it drying up a little bit, add more product to the suede. And this is where it's kind of different. We're gonna let this sit for 15 minutes, and then we're actually going to apply a second layer of Repel right over this without wiping it off in between the layers. Now that 15 minutes has been up, we're gonna add the second layer. So you might notice, well, there's less squeak this time. That first layer is actually already creating less friction on the surface, so when you apply the second one, it's not gonna be squeaking with the applicator. So when it comes to removal of repel, we're actually going to use 2 bald wipes. Now we're going to use one that's a bit damp, and this will help remove most of the repel from the surface. And then this is going to be a dry one that we'll use to kind of polish it off to guarantee that there's no marks left over, because we're going to be looking through it when driving down the road. So now that an additional 15 minutes has passed since the second layer, we can go ahead and wipe off the excess product using the damp towel first. Then last but not least, the dry towel to give us that perfect clarity that we're looking for. Generally, it's good practice when you're doing any sort of windshield coatings or anything to get in the car. You want to look out and see if there's any obvious areas that you may have missed. And this is going to be the best way to see those spots. But from what I can tell, we're looking good. The nice thing about View Evo is you shouldn't get any wiper judder like you get from some windshield protectants. And that single bottle of repel should be more than enough to do all of the windows on an M3 like this. This was the last and final episode of this season's Sunday Morning Rituals. We hope you learned a thing or two, or maybe found interest in a product that you want to try out. Most importantly, we wanted to show you that you can wash a car and still drive it, so I think that's what we're going to go do.